What's going on, guys? The Carrot Corner subscription service is launching in January 2024, and to celebrate, I thought I would bring you an extra 10-minute video once per week, every week here on YouTube, showing footage from my sessions that I've been recording for the Carrot Corner stuff, and today's video is all about overbetting. This video features overbets for value, overbets as a bluff, exploitative overbets, theoretical overbets, overbets on the turn, overbets on the river. If this is not currently a big part of your game, guys, let's make it a big part of your game. Let's learn how to use overbets properly. Okay, guys, first time we have the 10-8 offsuit here in the big blind. Hijack goes ahead and opens. I think this is super close between calling and folding. Both plays are going to be okay at 100 NL rake. If you think you can outplay people post flop, then all the more reason to call, so definitely make this call against recreational players. This is not a recreational, by the way, this is a regular. On this flop, if they c-bet, I think calling and raising are both fine. After check, we're building our turn probe size here around a nutted value region. We do gain the nut advantage after that flop action. And so betting, sizing that, sixes, nines, jack nine, jack six suited, pocket threes, that sort of thing. King, jack, ace, jack is going to want the value bet there as well for that size. And our bluffs are going to follow suit. The queen river obviously gives us the second nuts. King 10 is going to be a really small part of villain's range here. Our hand is going to be coming in at something like 90-something% equity. So when that is the case and you're in these really polar versus condensed type situations, meaning that our range is, you know, it's overbet the turn, it's going to be really rich in two pair sets, busted draws, and then straight draws that actually got there, like the 10-8 and the king 10. So we're mainly just going to be using really big sizing here when betting for value. And when bluffing, and villain has a condensed range in it, they check back the flop. They're now centered around mediocre hands. They've called the turn. And then on this river, they're going to be doing plenty of calling and checking behind if we check, but not very much raising. And that's why doing something cute here, like going for a small bet, doesn't really make much sense. You just want to increase the size of the pot you're going to win in this spot by betting really big. So that's what we do. And I think villain's going to be in a world of pain here. It's going to be super difficult in real life to pick between your bluff catchers here. Like, what do you do with kings? What do you do with 10-9? What do you do with aces? What do you do with queen 10? What do you do with 9-8? There's just so many different potential bluff catchers, and you have to try and figure out which ones to call, or obviously figure out if I'm over bluffing or not. This is a bluff catcher I think you definitely do want to call. With the king queen here, you're, at least theoretically, you're going to be unblocking all of the bluffs we can have for the most part, and you're going to be blocking some combos of king 10. So I think this is a really good bluff catcher. The queen of spades, of course, is not a negative card in this situation, guys. We're not bluffing with that card in our hand, so it's not a bad blocker. So I think villain played this absolutely fine, but yeah, definitely a great spot to use overbets where your range is really uncapped, where your opponent's range is capped, and where your value hands are often coming in at like the high 80s or low 90s in terms of equity, bread and butter overbet spot. Okay, on to the next one. This next hand begins with king, queen of clubs in the big blind. You can go either way here for sure against under the guns open. You can 3-bet or you can call. I quite like 3-bet. I think whenever people are under 4-betting, 3-bet is going to be the better option. You're getting folds from hands like pocket pairs from time to time. Ace jack, ace 10, ace queen offsuit even is not an amazing continue in these positions. So you're getting a lot of really useful fold equity there. The downside is getting 4-bet and having your equity kind of decimated, but the less people 4-bet, the better it's going to be to 3-bet here. On the flop, this is a fully exploitative check. What I'm really trying to do here is get a bit of transparency. I fully expect this pool not to play enough stabs on specifically ace 5-5, a board that looks like it's good for the 3-betters range. Therefore, when I go ahead and check king queen, I think that pocket pairs are going to play too transparently and passively and just sort of go into the checking range en masse at too high of a frequency. I also think that air balls are just not going to bet frequently enough, like the queen 10, queen jack just probably won't do enough betting here, and therefore when it does go check, my fold equity is going to be way higher than it should be. Now, theoretically, I think the overbet size here, or near pot size at this SPR, you don't need a big overbet. But I think this kind of sizing that we go for here makes a ton of sense because we are going to want to just build a massive pot with things like ace king, ace queen on this node. These hands are near nutted. So just going for this really big sizing with one part of our betting range I think is a really good idea. In theory, it should be an indifferent option between this and checking or betting smaller. King queen is the nut pair draw hand. It's doing better than almost any other pair draw hand is doing, because the king and the queen are always overcards, so stuff like jacks, 10s, and 9s. You can't say the same thing about jack 10 or something here. So if there is a naked pair draw hand to go for the overbet with, and I think there is, then it's definitely going to be this one. So theoretically, I think this is probably fine. But in practice, I think it's just going to yield way more fold equity than it's meant to. I mean, how are you feeling with like 6s or 7s or king queen or something in that spot? You're going to be feeling pretty bad. You're not going to have enough flush draws or enough ace-x as a density of your range if you're just a random 100 NL reg here. And so I think this is a great use of the overbet exploitatively. What we've really done in this hand is we've combined two different exploits. One is luring our opponent into sort of setting up their range in a way that's not too good so that they're exposed on later nodes of the hand. And then secondly, it's kind of like you're throwing up a tennis ball into the air to then whack it, right? There's like the toss and then there's the hit. The toss is like checking flop here and causing that imbalance, hopefully. And then the turn is where we actually serve an ace and, you know, or claim that we have an ace and pot it and just say, well, what are you going to do with that massive horde of pocket pairs and unpaired hands that you could have bet flop at a higher frequency with to sort of siphon them out of your range a bit more. But I don't think people achieve that. And so the real EV that you're trying to hunt as a poker player comes from understanding what people should do and then seeing how they're not doing that. So that's the sense in which theory is most useful. We don't want to copy it. We want to figure out how people differ from it and then understand how to exploit them. But the best way to really do that is to know how theory is meant to work in the first place. Okay, next spot. Okay, next hand, we have the 9-8 offsuit in the big blind. And these are both regs. One of them opened, I think it was small blind, goes ahead and opens here. And we decide to make the call. Pretty standard call with 9-8 offsuit. Not going to be an amazing hand, but it's EV for calling. A raise like this is going to be a bit higher than that of folding. Villain goes for a small bet on the flop. I almost didn't realize here that I had a straight draw and very nearly made a blunder by clicking the fold button, but we realized in time and called. I think this non-nut straight draw with no spade is mostly just going to play call, if not always call. I don't think there'll be much raise with this combo. Villain checks the turn, and now I choose to build my sizing around my value region, similar to what we were doing in hand one. So because we're betting mostly good queen X plus for value here, I think 75% pot's the right sizing. Not overbet in this case because villain can be check raising over pairs and two pair and stuff like that. We don't have the best top pair. Villain does still have those hands, even though they check turn. They're meant to protect that range a little bit. So we don't go for the overbet on the turn. We do have a think about river sizing here though. And here I started to think about the different regions of my range and what they were really going to be doing. I decided that I do have some nut flushes here, which can bet really big. I was just going to go for something near 2x pot with them. I think the king high flushes as well can probably go into that sizing. Lower flushes are going to bet closer to pot, maybe a slight overbet or slight underbet to pot. And then there's going to be a few thinner value bets than that are just going to be using like a B66 or B75 sizing somewhere in that neck of the woods. So definitely on the river, that's the time when your range is going to have the most different sizes in the toolkit available to it. We do have the diamond blocker here, which is nice. We block like the ace-8 of diamonds, which can for sure check call the turn as it's ahead of our bluffs. So the 8 of diamonds is a live blocker here. We also block the queen 8 of diamonds, which is quite likely to play this way. The 8-4 of diamonds to fill in is opening that. And so, yeah, this 8 of diamonds is reasonable. The other reason, though, that the 8 of diamonds might just be an okay bluff catcher could be that if villain is ever going to hero us with something like Jack 8 offsuit or Queen 8 offsuit or something like that, they would much rather have a diamond than not. And so we block some hands that could hero us as well while unblocking the other suits. So theoretically, I think this is an okay sort of combo to overbet. I don't think it's like a jamming combo. Normally you don't jam here without the ace of diamonds as a bluff, but going for some kind of between 1x pot and 2x pot overbet seems okay. Decide to go for this one and just sort of claim that I have a nut flush or king high flush on this node, and I think I've got plenty combos of those. Suited aces not being a really frequent 3-bet here. Pre-flop, they're just going to be calling like the ace 6 suited and stuff for the most part. Villain does fold after a small think. Yeah, this one is okay. You could argue about the exact sizing I use here, and you could make some arguments like, well, is villain really going to notice the difference between 48 and 41, and maybe I should have just gone 41 or something like that, which I think is a fair enough point to make. Okay, guys, final hand for today. We have the 8-5 of hearts in the big blind. We peel this min open. We check it over, and we face a bit of a strange flop c-bet size. Villain does decide to go for bit of an unusual sizing, which I think marks them as a recreational player most of the time. It's not that this is like a bad size or this size is like completely undefensible or anything like that, but it is going to be recreational players that use it. And while it is going to be stronger and it's going to be more polarized than the more standard half pot or third pot c-bet for this texture, I think it's going to be a bit erratic, and there will be players that just happen to use this as the sizing they pick when they want to c-bet the flop. So it's not that this is always going to be the nuts or whatever. Theoretically, our hand is probably already really close to a fold at this point. I think it'll peel, but it won't be amazing. In practice, I think things are a lot better. This range will be randomly constructed by some opponents, and even the opponents who are doing this really strong, we're going to have a large amount of implied odds on 8 and 5 runouts whenever we make 2-pair trips, basically, because their bigger sizing on the flop will actually push their range a bit more towards like the better top pairs and over pairs of the world, and so hitting 2-pair plus is going to be more valuable than usual against the people that just basically have too strong of a greedy value pot-sized c-bet going on there. So we do bink the 8 on the river. I think this is an amazing situation to either go for a check raise or an overbet. I absolutely detest betting smaller here. I think people won't raise you enough. They'll just call for the most part. And so you definitely want to either check raise or overbet here. If villain does have something like aces or kings, it might be a bit better to check raise, but I think overbet's still a really good line against those hands. And I'm not sure how often those hands are actually going to check the turn. So we go for the overbet here. I think it's a really standard thing to do, especially against a recreational player. When you just have a nutted hand, your recreational opponents are normally going to be pretty inelastic to your sizing, and so you want to go really big here. You could even go bigger. You could go up towards like 2x pot here as well. We do get the tank call from pocket kings, which I actually think is not a very good bluff catcher in this node. Kings with the king of clubs and spades just seems like a hand that, you know, while it's a good hand in absolute strength terms, it's the kind of hand that actually doesn't beat any of our value bets because we're not value betting a queen for this sizing, right? We just don't have any weaker hands for value. So villain has a bluff catcher here. And when you have a bluff catcher, what you really want to think about is like, well, what are the properties of the bluff catcher? What do I block? What do I unblock? And do I think my opponent's over bluffing or under bluffing? I think it's kind of difficult for us to be... I think it's kind of hard for us to be over bluffing the river now, considering we called the flop and some straights got there. It's just not going to be easy unless we just bluff every single club combo for an overbet or something like that. So I think this is a fold for villain, actually. This hand is just removing bluffs, not removing a single value combo, and it's a spot where we've already filtered considerably by calling the big bet on the flop. So all of the sort of red flags are here for an underbluff spot from villain's point of view. I don't think this is a great hand to pay off with, even in theory. And so yeah, I think this is maybe a misplay on villain's part, but you can see why a recreational player calls kings here, right? They had a really good hand. They checked the turn, they got a bit freaked out in the turn, but they still can't bring themselves to accept the new reality of their hand strength and fold this river. So yeah, that's all I've got to say on that one. If today's video whet your appetite for more exploitative content, then check out Grade E of the Carrot Poker School at carrotcorner.com. It is, of course, our exploitative course using mass data to show you exactly how people play an array of really common and important spots. Find out exactly what your opponents are doing with Grade E. If you haven't subscribed here on YouTube, please do. It means the world to me. It's really helping us grow as a channel. I hope you loved today's video about overbetting. Let me know your thoughts down below, and I'll see you soon. Bye, guys.